The plains had long since gone dry when Emmett Rose buried his wife beneath the sycamore tree. It was a hard ground to break, thick with roots and regret, and the iron spade snapped once before the hole was deep enough. She died coughing, mostly blood by the end, and with her went the last bit of sweetness from the farmhouse. They tried for children, they prayed, they dug potatoes and bled into the same soil, but there were only ghosts in Emmett's home now, and they knew him by name. The farm kept dying piece by piece. First the hens, then the well turned bitter. The corn grew short and yellow. Emmett's hands, once thick and sure, had worn down to bones beneath dirt-stained skin. He moved like an old man, though he was only 38. At night, he'd lie on the edge of his bed, listening to the quiet where a breath used to be, and he would wonder if perhaps there had been something he should have said when her hands grew cold. When winter approached, Emmett sold the wagon, half the tools, and most of the furniture. The bedroom stayed mostly empty, the bed too large for one. He ate dried beans and boiled roots. Folks whispered about him in town, how he stared too long, talked too little, and answered the pastor's kindness with silence. The women clucked their tongues, said he needed a wife. The men shook their heads. "Ain't nobody wantin' that life," they'd mutter behind their teeth. "He's lost his heart with her, and no use fishing what's already sunk." He ignored them until he didn't. It was at the livestock auction that he saw her first, not among the beasts but behind them, where the handlers sat on overturned buckets and chewed pipe tobacco. She wore a patched shawl that barely stretched across her shoulders. Her hair was the color of rusted tin and braided too tight. Her face was sun-dark and plain, but what folks noticed first, and always, was her size. She was big, not in the way of hard-fed men or strong-backed workers. She was soft and wide, her frame built like something that didn't apologize for taking up space. A girl would have shrunk herself in shame. This one didn't. She sat beside the barn wall and peeled a bruised apple with a stubby knife, watching the crowd with eyes that saw too much. Her name was Esther. No one seemed to want her, but she was there. Part of the stock, some joked. One fella said she'd been sleeping in the hayloft 3 nights running, working for scraps. Her kin had left or died or both. The farm she came from wasn't hers anymore. Emmett watched her eat. He didn't speak, just watched. Later, when the sun dropped, he found her again behind the auction pen, resting near the horses. "You hungry?" he asked. She looked up at him without surprise. "Ain't I always? I got beans and potatoes. I'll work for M. I ain't askin' for work." She frowned. "Then what are you askin' for?" He hesitated. The words felt strange on his tongue. "You need a place to sleep." Her eyes narrowed. "You offering your barn?" "I'm offering my bed," he said, and his voice cracked. There was a long pause. A wind rustled through the brittle hay. Somewhere a mule brayed. She said nothing, just chewed the inside of her cheek, slow and thoughtful. "Folks'll talk," she said finally. "Let them. I snore. I'm used to silence, could use the noise." She grinned then, small and crooked. It wasn't a pretty grin, but it was real. "Fine," she said, "but I take the side by the wall." He nodded. That night Esther climbed onto the bed like it owed her something, and Emmett stood awkward by the doorway, unsure whether he'd invited trouble or salvation. She pulled the quilt over her chest and looked at him, eyes sharp. "Ain't no favors between us. You need a wife or a worker, you say so." "I need someone who won't die on me just yet," he replied, voice flat. She watched him a moment longer. "I don't break easy." He blew out the lamp. They slept back to back. Her warmth filled the space where death had once lived, and for the first time in a long while, the bed didn't feel empty. In the morning, she made bread with lard and salt and fed the fire. Her hands were fast and knew where everything should go. She cleaned the hearth, mended a cracked chair, patched the chicken coop, and slit the throat of a fox trying for the eggs. By noon, Emmett stood staring at her like he didn't understand what she was. By nightfall, he knew he couldn't sleep without her weight in the room. The neighbors came around quick enough. They spoke through their smiles, eyes darting to the woman who filled Emmett's kitchen like she owned it. They asked polite things, where she came from, what she was, why she, why her, why so big. "She eats more'n him," one muttered at the general store. "She'd crush him in his sleep," said another. "Poor fool, he married desperation." But Emmett said nothing. And Esther, she just stared at them with that same slow-burning stare, like a lantern left in a dark room too long. She didn't try to win anyone. She didn't explain herself. When one neighbor's wife tried to slip her a corset in town, whispering that it might help draw the waist in, Esther left it on a fence post for the crows. She slept beside Emmett every night, same side of the bed, same lumpy pillow, same silence. He never touched her, not for a long time. But she knew the moment he stopped flinching at her nearness, when his breath stayed steady even after she shifted beside him. The season turned colder. They burned old fence rails to keep warm. He caught a fever bad. She nursed him through it, spooning vinegar and onion broth between cracked lips. He vomited twice on the floor. She didn't blink. When he woke, her hand was in his, not soft, not tender, just there. "You're still here," he said. She didn't answer. He didn't say thank you. But he let her keep the bed, and after a while they stopped pretending it wasn't hers too. Snow came hard that winter, the kind that piled against the doors and held whole towns hostage. Wind howled through the hills like something feral, and for weeks the roads to town vanished under drifts so high they swallowed fences whole. Emmett's roof leaked near the pantry. Esther plugged it with rags and old shirts, then nailed a baking pan beneath the drip. When she laughed about it, it sounded like wood breaking. They were alone together in a house meant for a family, and the silence began to grow teeth. She cooked 3 meals a day, big ones, enough to stretch through hours of shoveling, hauling, sewing. She didn't eat like someone ashamed of hunger. She didn't hide it or wait. She filled her plate same as him, sometimes more, and Emmett watched her chew with a quiet awe, like hunger might be holy if handled right. He worked less now. The frost left the fields stiff and gray, and there wasn't much to dig. But he fixed what he could, gutters, shutters, floorboards. His back still ached like an old mule's. At night they played cards. She beat him without blinking. Sometimes he caught her staring out the window. Always the same spot, toward the tree line where the wild began. She never said why. One night, long past midnight, the stove died. The fire sputtered out. He hadn't noticed, but Esther had. She was out of the bed before the cold fully bit, wrapping herself in the quilt, stomping down the ladder to relight it. He followed, barefoot, cursing the wind. When he reached the kitchen, he saw her on her knees, feeding the coals. Her breath came fast. Her cheeks were red from the cold, hair loose around her shoulders. She looked up at him. "You want the bed warm, you gotta keep the fire alive," she said. He knelt beside her, helped stack the kindling. They stayed that way a long while, faces lit by the orange flicker. "Why do you stare at the trees?" he asked. She didn't answer right away. "My brothers used to hunt that way," she said finally. "Taught me to track, shoot, when I was smaller." He blinked. "You." She gave him a look. "I wasn't always this size," came later, after hunger stopped being a threat. "What happened to them?" "They got mean." He didn't push, he didn't have to. The fire roared again. She stood and offered her hand. He took it without thinking. Her fingers were calloused, warm, real. Back in the bedroom, they lay side by side, and this time, their hands found each other beneath the quilt. Weeks passed. The roof collapsed in the shed. Esther helped rebuild it. They found a calf half dead in the field. She carried it on her back. Emmett tried to take it from her halfway, and she shoved him off with a grunt. "I ain't fragile," she said. He knew. He never tried again. By late January, the thaw began. Slowly, sleet turned to rain. The creek rose and swallowed the bridge to the east. In town, someone carved "Fat Wife, Thin Hope" on the church outhouse. She didn't mention it, but Emmett saw the set of her jaw that night and the way she split kindling like it owed her blood. That Sunday, he brought her to church anyway. Folks stared. The pew they sat on creaked. She wore her thickest shawl. A boy laughed behind his hand. His mother smacked him quiet. The preacher's wife whispered something sharp, and Esther turned, met her eyes, and smiled in a way that made the woman look away. After the sermon, as they stood in the snow outside, one of the farmers approached Emmett. "Thought you lost your sense, talkin' in a woman like that." Emmett said nothing. The man leaned close. "You could have done better." Esther stepped forward. "He did," she said. "Trust me." The man laughed. "No offense, lady, but folks are sayin' you sleep in the barn 'cause you don't fit the house." She looked him full in the face. "I sleep in the bed." He sleeps next to me, and if you got a problem with that, I can teach your wife what a real woman tastes like." The man's face went white. His wife's did too, though hers flushed after. Emmett didn't say a word, just took Esther's hand and walked her home. That night he reached for her in the dark. No words, just hands. She let him. Spring came with mud and thaw and work. The soil softened. She planted turnips, onions, cabbage. Her body moved like it belonged in the field, like every heavy step pressed life into the ground. Emmett watched her swing the hoe and thought she looked like war and woman and wonder all rolled into one. One morning, as he watched her pull a basket of eggs from the coop, he asked, "You ever wish you were different?" She squinted at him. "What kind of different?" "Smaller, softer, more like the women in town." She shook her head. "They ever carry a calf 3 miles through snow?" "No." "They ever patch a roof without falling through it?" "No." "They ever hold you through fever while you shit yourself near to death?" "No." "Then why would I want to be like them?" He didn't answer. She came close, touched his face with her thick fingers. "You got used to sleeping next to silence. I'm not silence, I'm noise, I'm weight. I'm what keeps the bed from floating off when the world goes to hell." He kissed her. It wasn't gentle, it wasn't soft. It was the kind of kiss that bruises. And she kissed him back like she'd been starving for it. The harvest that year surprised everyone. Crops thick in the field, chickens laying double, and the cow fat with milk. Emmett stood in the middle of it once, staring out like he didn't quite believe it was real. Esther had her hands in the soil every day. She whispered to the seeds like they were her own, packed the dirt firm, moved through the rows like she owned the land and always had. They traded eggs and onions for flour and soap. People stopped staring as much, still talked, sure, but from farther away. One woman came by with a dish of cornbread and the edge of an apology. "Didn't think she'd last," she murmured. "Figured you run her off like the others." Emmett looked at Esther, then back. She didn't come here to be run off. She came to run the place. By midsummer, Esther was known for her bread, not because it was pretty, it wasn't, but because it filled your belly and stuck with you, the kind of food made from survival. Folks who once turned up their noses came asking for her recipe. She gave it, but it never came out the same in their ovens. She knew the trick wasn't in the flour. It was in the hands that worked it. That July a letter came. No stamp, just folded rough, tucked under a rock on the porch. She read it and didn't speak for a long time, then she burned it in the stove. Emmett watched her do it. "Someone you knew?" he asked. "Someone I used to fear." He waited. She said nothing more. That night she sat outside in her nightgown, looking toward the woods. The same direction she always watched, her arms crossed under her chest, face unreadable. The next day, she started carrying the rifle. She cleaned it first, oiled it, sighted it. Emmett hadn't known she'd kept it, hidden in the attic, wrapped in burlap. The thing looked too big for her, but it rested on her shoulder like it belonged there. She took to walking the edge of the property at dusk, just once around, said it was for the coyotes. Emmett didn't ask again. But he saw the change. She wasn't frightened, she was waiting. The sound of the rifle cocking in the dark became normal. That fall, someone tried the fence. Wire cut near the back pasture, nothing taken, no tracks, just a message scrawled on a broken plank, "Whore cow," the letters crude, jagged, nailed to the post like a warning. Esther read it, then took it down and fed it to the fire. "I know who it was," she said, voice low, "and I know what they want." "Who?" Emmett asked. "My brother." The word fell like stone in water, heavy, final. "You said he got mean." "He got more than mean. He got used to hurting things." Emmett waited. "When Pa died, he made himself the king of nothing, said I had to earn my place. I did, for a while. Then I got too big to break, so he tried a different way." She was still looking out the window, voice flat. "He tried to sell me. When I ran, he said he'd come find me someday. Guess he finally meant it." Emmett stood silent a long time. "You want to run again?" She turned. "I've been running, not anymore." She started sleeping with the rifle by the bed. It was mid-November when the stranger arrived, not at the door but near the edge of the field, watching, a tall man with a beard like rust and eyes like cold ash. He didn't approach, just stood there until Esther saw him from the window. She didn't move. "That him?" Emmett asked. She nodded. "I'll handle it." "No," she said. "He came for me." She went outside alone. The ground was frozen. Frost bit at her bare forearms. She didn't bring the rifle, only a kitchen knife tucked into her apron. They talked low. Emmett couldn't hear, just watched. The man leaned forward once, said something sharp. Esther didn't flinch. She stepped forward and slapped him hard across the face. He staggered, laughing, then he lunged. Emmett moved for the door, but by the time he got it open, the man was already on the ground. Esther stood over him, knee on his throat, the knife pressed against the corner of his eye. "Say it again," she hissed. "Say it now." The man wheezed. "You want to drag me back, sell me, break me. You should have killed me when I was small enough to carry." She leaned in closer. "You try this again, I won't leave your bones for the worms." She let him go. He left limping, spitting blood. Esther came inside, washed her hands in the basin, then sat down and cut onions like nothing happened. Emmett poured her a drink. Neither spoke. Later that night, he reached for her under the quilt, not out of comfort, not out of need, just because he was proud of her and didn't know how else to say it. "You ever think about leaving?" he asked. "I was never going to stay long when I first came," she said, "but then you gave me the bed. You deserved it." She looked at him. "Took you a while to believe that." "I do now." She leaned her head against his chest. "Then I might stay longer than I planned." Outside, the cold thickened, but inside, the fire never burned out again. The man never came back, but the cold did. A hard, gray winter settled over the land like a warning. Snow stacked high, then froze solid. Cattle leaned into each other for heat, and even the crows stayed low in the trees, quiet and watching. People stopped coming by. Roads vanished again, and the farmhouse became a ship in ice, adrift, isolated, sealed into itself. But inside the house, things moved. Esther started humming when she worked. Small things, tuneless, bits of half-forgotten songs, or maybe new ones she made up. Emmett listened. Sometimes he'd ask her what it was. "Nothing," she'd say, "just breath with edges." The bed didn't creak any more under their weight. The frame had settled, or maybe accepted them. They filled it fully now, him with his lean limbs and quiet sighs, her with her thick arms and steady heartbeat. They no longer slept apart, or even side by side. They slept tangled like roots. But there was a quiet beneath the quiet, a shape forming in the dark corners of her movements. She moved slower in the mornings, took to resting her hands on her belly. She told him nothing, but Emmett watched her skin pale, her shoulders stiffen when she bent too long. Something was changing. And one night she woke up gasping, not in fear, in pain. He lit the lamp. "What is it?" Her face was wet with sweat. "I think," she whispered, "I think I'm not alone anymore." The silence stretched between them. He blinked. "I don't know yet, but I think." Emmett stared at her, not shocked, not scared, but like someone opening a door they never meant to find. Esther lay back, breathing shallow. "If it's true," she said, "it'll be hard." He nodded. "People'll talk again. I don't care." She turned her face toward him. "It might not come out small, not soft, not the way they want, might come out like me." He put his hand over hers. "Then it'll live." A month passed before they were sure. She told no one, not the midwife, not the store clerks, not the preacher's wife who came sniffing with soup and gossip. The child grew in secret, beneath layers of wool and silence. And in the silence, the world began to test them again. There was a sickness spreading through the valley, started in the west, moved east. Some kind of fever, violent, quick. People started boarding windows, closing off wells. The town school shut down. No one touched hands. The church bells rang more than usual. Esther stayed home, didn't risk the road. Emmett went only when they couldn't wait. He brought back flour, nails, stories. "They're scared," he said. "Good," she replied. "Fear teaches." Then one morning in March, a knock came at the door. It was a girl, couldn't have been more than 16. Thin as a willow branch, barefoot, bleeding from one palm, her eyes were wild. Please, she gasped. Please, I heard you help. Esther moved first. Emmett tried to stop her, but she was already at the door. The girl collapsed. They brought her in. She was burning up, skin hot to the touch. She'd been running through the woods, she said. Her parents were dead. The fever took them. The townspeople wouldn't let her near. Esther wiped her face, soothed her hair back, fed her broth one spoon at a time, never flinched. Emmett watched in silence. You could catch it, he said that night low. Esther stared at the ceiling. Then I catch it. And the baby. She didn't answer. But the girl lived, fever broke. After 4 days, she could stand. My name's Maddie, she said. I don't know where else to go. Esther looked at her. You're here. That was enough. Maddie stayed. She slept on the floor at first, wrapped in old quilts. Then Esther made up the loft. Emmett fixed a lock on the door. Maddie helped in the fields when she was strong enough. Her hands bled. Esther taught her how to wrap them. You ever shoot? She asked the girl one afternoon. No. You will. And so Maddie became part of the house. Not daughter, not servant, something else. A witness. She watched Esther grow heavier with child. Watched Emmett grow lighter with worry. She watched the world around them darken again. Because the sickness hadn't gone, it had waited. One night there were flames on the ridge. Town's burning something, Emmett said. Esther didn't look up. They're burning someone. It was true, the fever had returned. People panicked, blamed outsiders, travelers, the poor, the fat, the loud. They came to the house the next day, 3 of them, men with kerchiefs over their mouths, eyes wide with fear and hate. You took in a girl, the tallest said. She came from where it started, could still be carrying it. She's clean, Emmett said. Can't take that risk. We're moving folk out. Isolate M, just a few days to be safe. Maddie stood behind the door, shaking. Esther came forward, belly round beneath her coat. She didn't raise her voice. She's not going anywhere. The man looked her up and down. You think you can stop us? Esther didn't blink. You think I care if I die? There was something in her eyes, not just defiance, something deeper. The kind of stillness that made the men take a step back without meaning to. You come on this porch again, she said. You better bring more than words. They left. Emmett turned to her. You're not scared anymore. I was never scared, she said, only quiet. He reached for her hand. She let him hold it. The next week Maddie cried as they buried one of the hens. The sickness never came for her. It never touched the house again. But they all understood it now, how fast things could fall apart, how thin the walls were between breath and silence. In May, the child kicked. Esther smiled for the first time in days. It wasn't pretty, it was fierce. She sat on the porch that night and let Maddie press her ear to her belly. What do you want it to be? The girl asked. A survivor, Esther said. Then she looked at Emmett. And yours, no matter what shape it comes out in. He nodded, mine, from the moment it draws breath. The child came in the middle of a storm. Lightning carved the sky open and rain slammed the roof like it was trying to punch through. The road had washed out 3 days before, and the creek had swallowed the lower field. Emmett had boarded the windows tight and lit every lamp in the house. The wind still found its way in. Esther's labor started at dusk and didn't end till dawn. She didn't scream, didn't beg, just bit down on a strip of leather and bore it with the same raw, rooted strength she used to split firewood and haul fence posts. Her face didn't change until the last push. Then she growled, an animal sound, deep in her chest, and the room went still. The child came out red and slick and furious. Maddie caught it, hands shaking. She didn't know how, but she did it anyway. Emmett stood behind them both, pale and wordless. A daughter. Broad across the shoulders, thick dark hair already matted to her skull, lungs loud enough to shake the walls. Esther looked at her and nodded once, not surprised, as if she'd been expecting this shape, this storm-born girl. She's mine, she said hoarsely, in every way. They named her Mercy. Not for softness, not for forgiveness, but for the fact that she lived. Years passed. The farm didn't get easier. Life didn't ease just because they'd survived something. Droughts came, then floods, a fire one spring that took the eastern fence line. Once, Emmett's leg got caught under a collapsed cart axle. Esther lifted it off him by herself. It shattered his hip, slowed him down for good. But they built anyway. They bought a second cow, then a third. Maddie learned to shoot better than most men in the valley. She stayed, refused every offer of marriage from the boys who started sniffing around once she grew tall and strong. I got my place, she'd say, and I've already bled for it. Mercy grew fast. She was loud like her mother, stubborn like her father, and sharp in a way that neither could claim. She asked questions no one had answers to. She didn't play with dolls. She played with the bones of birds and sticks shaped like blades. When the preacher tried to give her a book about obedience, she used it for kindling. Esther never apologized for her. She was made in the dark, she told Emmett once. She came through fire. You don't get something gentle from that. Emmett nodded. He never tried to tame her, only taught her how to aim straight and speak when it mattered. When the neighbors spoke her name, Esther, they said it softer than before. Some still whispered when she passed, but fewer now. Most looked her in the eye. Even the cruel ones held their tongues. There was a weight to her, and not just in body. She carried a kind of power that didn't ask permission to exist. Once, the same man who'd called her a whore cow stopped her outside the grain store. He was older now, sickly. I was wrong, he said, not quite looking at her. She didn't blink. You were weak. He nodded, and that was the end of it. Emmett died when Mercy was 11, not sudden, just wore out. He passed in the night, quiet, one hand still holding Esther's. She didn't cry, not then. Not at the funeral where the whole town came, lining the back fence in their best clothes. Some bringing pies like that could mean something. Not when they lowered him beneath the sycamore, beside the first wife. Not even when Mercy climbed into her lap that night and asked what they were supposed to do now. She cried 2 weeks later, chopping onions. Maddie found her hunched over the block, eyes full, knife still in hand. He made room, Esther whispered, when nobody else would. Then she wiped her face, and the knife kept working. Mercy turned 15 with a rifle in her hand and dirt under her nails. She'd never lived soft, never wanted to. She could lift more than most grown men and ride bareback through the ridge paths without blinking. But she also read, deep, furious reading. She filled old ledgers with copied lines from banned books and drew maps of places she'd never seen. She's going to leave, Maddie said once. Esther nodded. She supposed too. She's not like us. She's the reason we made it. The night before she left, Mercy stood in the doorway, boots laced, pack slung over one shoulder. She wasn't crying. She wasn't smiling either. I'll come back, she said. You don't have to, Esther replied. Just survive. That was the only blessing she ever gave. Years later, strangers would come through the valley, asking about the woman who slept in the barn. The one they said was too fat to keep, too loud to love, too strange to stay. And the story would grow strange around the edges. They'd say she scared off raiders with her bare hands, that her daughter broke a man's leg at age 10, that she once lifted a horse out of a ditch, that her bread could feed you for days and make you forget your hunger. But the truth, the real truth, was simpler. She stayed when no one else would. She took the bed when it was offered and made it hers. She was not built for smallness. And in the world that tried to shame her, break her, bury her, she rose, fat and feared, fierce and full, the kind of woman no storm could carry off.